please.
We're good.
And I'll live on YouTube.
It's streaming across.
Started.
Okay.
You're on.
Good evening. Welcome to the 7 p.m. Community Forum. My name is Mark Stefanik, Superintendent of the Tip City Schools. Just do a brief introduction. I've been in the area for about 3 or 4 weeks, transitioning to the area and transitioning to the school district, but officially became superintendent on August the 1st. And we decided to have these community forums because there's a lot of interest in the school design for this coming fall. And since we're in August and school is scheduled to begin in late August, good time to have the community forum. What we're going to do this evening, this is an informational type of Zoom meeting and live stream. We're going to be presenting most of the information, but we want to provide as much detailed information as folks would want. So we are going to take questions, but it is impossible to have enough time to open up all the mics and answer questions individually. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up chat rooms, and you can type in questions, and we'll have folks monitoring the chat room, and we'll try to answer as many of those questions tonight. If we don't have the specific answer tonight, we'll start doing more research and we'll enter the answers in our FAQ on our website. So continue to watch that space, and we'll be frequently updating the information on the FAQ. So tonight we'll start with a brief description of the 2 options that we're offering our students at the present time, with the understanding that anytime there's a new order out of Columbus, either out of the governor's office or out of the Department of Health, we will have to modify our plan to make sure we're meeting all of those governmental mandates. So right now we have 2 options. First option, which is the most popular option to date, is 5 days in-person school at the school buildings. This is closest to traditional schooling, but due to the health situation that we're in the middle of, we've got some restrictions placed on us that we have to follow. So I'll walk through what a typical day would look like, and we'll try to mention as many of the restrictions that the students may encounter or adults may encounter along the way. First of all, in the morning, students have to get to school. We'll run buses. At this particular time, we're permitted 2 students per seat on the buses, but there is a mask mandate. Due to the fact that when students are sitting 2 per seat, there's no way to social distance on the bus. And so we have the mask mandate to provide a healthy environment or as healthy as we possibly can on the buses. Students would get to school. We'll have a rotation of dismissal off the buses to make sure that there's not large groups of students either on the sidewalk outside the schools or in the hallways. So we'll try to minimize the number of students in close contact with each other as they're working their way to their classrooms. Parents that bring students to school, typically from what I've learned, that some parents might arrive significantly early in the day, and some students get dropped off, and there are groups of students congregating on the sidewalks outside of some of our buildings. Due to the social distancing and the safety provisions that we're putting in place, that practice cannot continue as it has been occurring in the past. We'll have to make sure that students remain in the cars until a designated dismissal time so that students could be let into the building either individually or in very small groups so that we don't have large group congregations anywhere on our campuses. Students will be in school. Will social distance anywhere from 3 to 6 feet in the classrooms, depending on the square footage in the classroom. Right now, we had a change since our noon community forum. The governor put out an executive order this afternoon that said that all students, grades K to 12, have a mandatory mask order in the schools. So now all of our buildings will have mandatory masks for students and staff members. We'll keep the social distancing in addition to the masks. So things like bathroom breaks, recess, lunchtime, they'll all have additional health restrictions on them to make sure that we can social distance, minimize touch points, and provide opportunities for additional cleaning throughout the school day. In the evening, same thing in reverse of the morning, we'll have students re-embarking on the buses and going out to the family vehicles for parent pickup, but those will be done in moderation to make sure that there are no large groups or large lines of students waiting to get on the buses or waiting to get in their family vehicles. So all of these extra social distancing items and safety items will add to the school day, but it will also add to activities that are new to adults and students in all of our schools. We'll continue to monitor health updates from the County Department of Health to determine whether or not we have to segue into remote learning, and we'll get to the remote learning piece in just a minute. For folks that are not comfortable with live in-person schooling as we start the year, you will have an option of 100% online learning from your home or another place of instruction rather than the school buildings. The online learning is not conducted by Tip City teachers. It is an option that the Tip City School District is giving to parents, but the classes are conducted by teachers that are employed by the online school vendor. So students will be getting used to new teachers through that platform, but they are all certified teachers, and they will have a more independent, individualized sequence of lessons through the online program. It also provides some flexibility for students and families because you do not have to sign in for a certain class at, say, 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. Students can sign in when it works for their family schedule or their schedule, and the lessons will be there ready for them to upload and activities are ready for them to complete. When we did remote learning in the spring, teachers would be online for certain amounts of time, and if students wanted to access that lesson, they had to be online at the exact same time the teacher was. With the online platform, due to the fact that they are serving students all across the country, most, if not all, the lessons will be in a tape lesson format, and then the students can contact the teacher as needed if they need some clarification or they need some extra assistance. One thing I forgot to mention this morning, and it's the last bullet point on this slide, there will be a TIP staff member assigned as a point of contact. Now, this TIP staff member is not the child's teacher, but the person, the staff member will monitor the student's progress and be there as an extra support person if the students would need either tech assistance or content area assistance while they're working through their online program. We wanted to do a little compare and contrast between this online option and the remote learning that students were involved in the spring and may be involved in depending on the level of health status in our county. Excuse me. The remote learning that's provided by our teachers, if schools would happen to be ordered closed, your child would see his or her teachers in the remote platform. The online folks would remain in their online option, and they would have the teachers that are affiliated with the online program. The remote piece, more time restrictive. The students will work through their typical schedules or have their typical activities with their teacher. In the online option, students can turn it on and participate anytime that it works for them. At the last board meeting, a board member gave an example that she heard of a family where the high school students were more comfortable getting their work done at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. and midnight than they were at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. or noontime. And in the online option, you have that option. In the remote setup with our school district, you may or may not have that option for the activities, and most likely you would not have the option for actual direct instruction from the teacher. So that's where we stand right now. We were at a 4th grade through 12th grade mask mandate for students as of noon today. But as I mentioned earlier this afternoon, the governor put a K through 12 mask mandate out for the entire state. And so we'll have to look at our plans and see what else we have to add to the plans for our primary buildings since the mask mandate is there as well. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the question lines. Folks may have been typing in questions already anyways. We're going to start answering some of the questions that are out there, and we hope we can provide as much clarity as possible for August the 4th as we can. Either chat box, do we have any questions out there?
Not any in the Zoom.
One thing we do have this evening, and we like to thank some of our parents from this afternoon, we found out that our district Zoom license had a maximum of 100 people in the session. And so we went to our board meeting setup where we're able to live stream on YouTube. And then we have an unlimited number of people that can participate in this community forum. So thank you to the parents that told us that they were locked out this afternoon because we were not aware of the participant maximum on Zoom. And so now we're able to provide a format where as many people as are willing to come in have access to our session. All right.
We have one on YouTube. Will K-12 students be required to wear masks the entire day, or will there be times when they can have breaks from wearing them?
The recommended for some districts plans that we've seen already that were going K through 12 mask mandate, they have built in what they call mask breaks. And in the mask break session, what you have to ensure is that the students have plenty of room to social distance and make sure that they stay at least 6 feet away from each other. So yes, especially for our younger ones, and going to the first question about the non-air conditioned buildings, especially in those buildings, we'll give plenty of mask breaks so the students can have a break, especially if those buildings are warmer than our other buildings. We'll also have to revisit what other ventilation options are out there for our primary buildings because everybody now will be in masks. And it was brought to my attention by several people that even without the masks, there can be some very uncomfortable days in our primary buildings. And so we're definitely going to look at whatever we can do to make those buildings as comfortable as possible.
We have a couple questions about positive tests and then also whether students can return from the online option in second semester. And the answer to the online option, if you choose to enroll your student in the full-time online option that we're offering, yes, we are asking that you commit to a semester in that program. You would be able to reevaluate the situation at the time, at the end of the first semester and determine if it was something you felt more comfortable with and wanted to return your student to the regular classroom or the regular school setting. So that is something that is available at second semester to return from the full-time online option.
I apologize to the folks on the community forum. I took my mask off to take a drink of water before and forgot to put it back on. And so I was actually violating the new order for masks for everybody. There were a couple questions on there about health conditions and what happens when people test positive. Going to the first question about when might we change from live school to remote learning. We had some folks that were uncomfortable with us just using the county rating system, the colored rating system, to make that decision, because they gave some examples where something could be happening in a specific part of Miami County and it wasn't really tip specific. And so we would be making a decision based on a change in the health status of another part of the county. And so we said that in addition to monitoring that as a point of information or a data point, we would also be in close contact with the Department of Health to get actual information about what is happening inside of the TIP City School District to see if the health status would cause us to change our educational format. So it wasn't going to be what our initial recommendation was. Once the colors change, we start changing. We're going to actually do some additional research if the color would change to see if the virus is impacting Tip City specifically. If it would impact Tip City specifically, if somebody tests positive in the school, we are going to closely partner with the health department. The health department comes in, they evaluate the situation, and they determine what the quarantine recommendations would be for that classroom, building, bus, what have you. And they would go through the rating process. One thing I can tell the audience is, as far back as 3 weeks ago, the health department says if folks are all masked, that gives schools and students a chance to stay in school longer. Even if there is a positive case, if the whole population is masked, then the group that has to be quarantined is limited. Without masks and everybody just in the big group setting of a school, without masks, you could have entire classes and or wings, or potentially even the entire school closed down and quarantined based on positive tests. So with the governor's order this afternoon and everybody in masks, it potentially gives us a better chance to stay open for a longer period of time, because the quarantine grouping has the potential to be smaller based on a singular or unique outbreak.
So a couple other questions with the full-time online option. The AP honors advanced courses at the high school, there is summer work components that go along with those courses. And so many students have been working on that, and some of them may be looking to enroll in the full-time online option. That is part of the design with the point of contact being a TIP staff person. The TIP staff point of contact would work with the school's PLP teacher to identify that summer work that has already been completed, and then adjust the curriculum within those AP classes and advanced classes to match what had been done with that summer work. Second question there about, returning second semester, will that curriculum match up when the student returns second semester? Again, we're going to do our very best to make sure that that mirrors, and that point of contact is going to help with that. But just like anytime a student is transitioning from a new school to from a different district, there may be some areas where we can't be completely seamless. But we're going to try to be as seamless as possible with those transitions, because that's in the best interest of our students, that's in the best interest of our schools.
and teachers are trained to do gap analysis. And if students have gaps in the learning because the sequences aren't exactly the same, teachers are trained to fill in those gaps and catch students up if they need it.
I have a follow-up question for you on what exactly do you consider a break from the masks? And will the school be providing masks, wipes, and other necessary supplies?
Okay. A break from the masks won't necessarily be designed from the district office. That will happen in each educational setting. But teachers in recent times, I would say at least within the last decade, have gotten very experienced at utilizing what we call brain breaks. And students, get up out of their seats, take a break from learning, get some activity, get some exercise, possibly, take a walk around the campus or whatever the teacher's design is for a brain break. And I would say that in my mind, the mask breaks mirror that. So, if the teacher can spread the students out and make sure that there's 6 foot plus between the students, then the actual mask break could be for whatever time limit that teacher or the principal thinks is appropriate. It wouldn't be an unlimited amount of time because, we've got to value the time for learning and they would have to return to the classroom, and our classrooms just aren't big enough to make sure that we can maintain the 6 foot distancing in every room with the full class there. And so then when they return to the classroom, they would have to have their masks back on. Tip City is going to provide at least one mask to everyone. And a shout out to one of the Tip City teachers that all summer she has been making masks for, my understanding, all adults and all students in the district, which is an amazing effort, by somebody, an amazing contribution to the school district. And today, I saw a screenshot of a posting that said after the governor's order that the governor is going to send out masks to all the school districts. I don't know if those are cloth masks that are reusable or if they're disposable masks, but that would be another mask that we could potentially give to every student. And so we may have 2 to provide, to every student during the school year. As far as cleaning supplies, wipes and things like that, yes, we are in the process of acquiring a lot of various cleaning resources to make sure that we can maintain an enhanced, very frequent cleaning schedule in the buildings so that we can keep our buildings as safe as possible for all of our students and all of our staff members.
So there's a question here about classes possibly being eliminated at the high school. At this time, no classes have been eliminated at the high school. We're still planning to offer the full selection of courses that students scheduled for last spring. So no changes there. There was also a question about remote learning. And will there be improvements from the spring? And absolutely, there are going to be improvements from the spring. We actually had a meeting just this afternoon with teachers to talk about remote learning 2.0, as we're calling it. And I'm going to steal Mr. Stefanik's phrase here, but what we experienced last spring was unplanned emergency remote learning. And this fall and this school year, we're going to have planned remote learning. So there's been extensive conversations with teachers about what the expectations are for remote learning and setting those expectations. And there'll also be expectations for students in remote learning. And so, we've talked quite a bit about more synchronous, meaning more live instruction taking place with remote learning and setting up schedules and looking at alternatives for students that maybe can't meet those schedules and having attendance requirements. And there will be a difference between emergency remote learning last spring and planned remote learning this school year.
To add to that, when we had the emergency remote learning in the spring, I believe the decision was made on either a Thursday or a Friday, and schools were expected to kick it into action, early the next week. And when those types of things happen, the experiences that teachers can give to students are based solely on the training that they've had and the experience that they've had with technology. And in our teaching ranks, and it's not just here in Tip City, it's virtually nationwide, there is a pretty wide spectrum of training levels and experience levels amongst teachers. And so what families experienced nationwide was some inconsistency of opportunities and activities that the students were able to participate in because they were based on how skilled or how trained each teacher was with the use of technology for remote learning. This summer, we're putting plans in place, and in August, there will be trainings for teachers. So we will have a level in Tip City of everyone will have training at what we consider to be the baseline level. And then everyone moves forward from there. So the experiences that families would receive through the remote learning process should be a lot more consistent and a lot more similar than they are different. And we're going to work to, get everyone to the best practice level. That may not happen by the first day of school, but the more experience we get with remote learning, the higher the quality of instruction that will occur district-wide.
So there's a question there about teachers, and can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead. Going back to the AP question, and or our class is going to be eliminated from the course menu at Tip City High School. Right now, the answer is no. We're not planning on making any revisions. But what we also have to state is that there's a pretty extensive menu with schools PLP. And what we're going to do is we're going to match the offerings through schools PLP with the menu of courses at Tip City High School. So if folks say, well, I'm going to go online because I can take these classes that Tip City doesn't offer, we're not setting up schools PLP to be that. Right? Maybe in the future, that could be something that we could use to enhance our offerings to students. But right now, as we come out of the gate as another option, students should be able to take the same courses, whether they choose 100% online or 100% in person. Sorry.
No, you're fine. There was a question about face shields, and specifically with teachers. What we would be looking at with face shields are teachers that are going to be teaching phonics or speech pathologists. We are looking at identifying which teachers would need that type of PPE, and we're making those purchases. But there again, those face shields would be used during those specific learning times, and then the teachers would wear a mask during all other learning times. So that is something that we're taking into consideration. As far as students wearing face shields, that's something that we're going to need to get further clarification on from the governor's orders and whether or not that's permissible or not. Additional questions about positive tests as well.
Okay, well, with the shields, one other piece with the shields, anyone that is not wearing a mask, and again, in the beginning, this had to do with staff, but now with today's order, it's staff and students. And so I'm assuming that the health department guidelines get extended to the students as well. anyone that is not wearing a mask, even if they're going to a face shield, we have to document that with the health department. So folks that may have medical conditions that cause them not to be able to wear a mask, we have to document that with a medical certification, and that has to be on record at the health department why said person is not wearing a mask. And so my understanding is for things like speech therapists and primary teachers, where it's optimal for them to be able to demonstrate sounds and how to form those sounds with your mouth. We're allowed as a school district to say these people are given a waiver from the mask and they can wear the shield for this reason. But for others, it has not been presented to us that there's a choice, mask or shield. We have to get clearance from the health department for anyone else that we don't designate as a shield wearer. Another example of that would be bus drivers. Some bus drivers wear glasses, and it has been found that wearing a mask raises the potential that your glasses would fog up. So we're going to purchase some face shields for the drivers so that the airflow is more consistent around their eyes so that their glasses can remain clear and they can operate the bus safely.
Question about schools PLP or the full-time online option, and then participating in extracurriculars such as sports and clubs and band. Yes, the students are still enrolled as Tip City Schools students, and so they would have every opportunity to participate in those activities.
I'll take the next one as to the IEPs. There's a question about folks with hearing disabilities. Would their teachers be included in the waiver on masks to use face shields? Most definitely. And another overarching comment, any student that is on an IEP or a 504 plan, if there would need to be some waivers to some of the safety protocols in order to meet their needs and complete the requirements of the individual education plan or the 504 plan, those things would be permitted as well. But in everything we're doing, our driving force is to make sure that our schools are safe places for the students and the staff members. And so we're gonna balance every decision that is this as safe as we can possibly be so that we can remain open and provide live education to our students.
So a question about positive tests and how parents would be notified and written protocol to inform parents of this procedure. We, again, are going to be working with the Miami County Health Department to determine when or if a school would need to be shut down due to a positive test or multiple positive tests and exposure. The Miami County Public Health would work with us as well as far as identifying which students needed to quarantine and things of that nature. And as far as communicating that, we would communicate as much as we possibly could while also respecting the privacy rights of those students. We would use all means of communication to get that information out to parents, whether that be a one call from Mr. Stefanik, our social media sites, our webpage. We would get that information to you and those parents who needed that information.
And the last piece of that is all of our written protocols. We have task forces right now reviewing the draft protocols that are out there and with recommendations from the health department. And as soon as those are finalized, those will either be posted on the website or they will be available when schools open and your children may actually be the old-fashioned way, bringing them home so that everybody has them in print and you can refer to them as needed.
Great question here about the deadline to indicate in-person learning or the full-time online learning option. We have set that deadline for August 16th. So that gives parents about 2 weeks to make that decision, and that information will be along or pushed out with the re-registration process. We've had a few delays in getting that re-registration process because of the vendor. We're working through that and hope to have that information out to parents very, very soon so that you do have that full 2 weeks to make that decision.
Some have asked why there is a deadline at all and why can't parents have right up until the first day of school. Much like teachers set up class lists, the online company has to make sure that they have enough teachers to monitor the number of students that are registering for the online program. In addition, the online company has to program the class selections for each student. And so all those preparations take a little bit of time, and our goal is to try to have everybody ready to go on our Tip City first day of school so that the online students can start the school year the same time that the live students on campus start the school year.
Question about pay to participate fees and possibly reductions in those if the seasons are limited. And yes, that is something that we are working through with the treasurer's office, and that will be part of the discussion at the August 10th work session. There will be a plan presented to the board at that time as far as what pay to participate fees will look like in the event of partial seasons, canceled seasons, and how those funds will be either reduced or refunded or credited to future participation.
I've seen a couple of chats as the chat list keeps scrolling by. Some folks about how are you going to enforce the mask rule and how are you going to enforce social distancing. Folks will be held accountable, for the social distancing and the mask mandates. But instead of it turning into a consequence, like everybody gets sent to the office, for some kind of punishment about the mask or the social distancing, it's going to be more about education. It's going to be talking about why social distancing is needed, why the masks are needed, and how that helps the entire school, continue to operate in an in-person format. And so we'll be doing that. With that being said, though, after several education sessions for some folks, if they continue to struggle with the mask mandate or the social distancing, there will be some communications with families to enlist your support on helping your student make those safety protocols a priority, or make both protocols priorities, as they operate at school.
There's a question there about food service and whether or not hot lunch items would be available. And our food service group met earlier this week, and that was one item of discussion among many others in that meeting. And our food service staff is fully committed to trying to provide hot lunch items within pre-packaged, whether it be a box lunch or a tray lunch, but still maintaining that hot lunch item in the food service program.
Yeah, we did validate that yesterday, that if students had a chance to go up in the past and populate their own tray, by reaching in and grabbing, a salad or a sandwich or whatever, those types of operations procedures have to stop while this health situation is going on. But hot items will still be available, but the tray will just have to be put together by food service staff, and then the students would get either the hot items or the cold items, as they near the end of the line. Those procedures are getting finalized because, again, we have to minimize touch points, and we have to make sure that all the food is just handled by the staff, and students don't have access to the food. Another question there at the top is, where will kids eat lunch? What we said this morning is I'll try to erase a picture from your mind. If you picture a typical school cafeteria where kids are shoulder to shoulder and every seat is filled up with a student, eating lunch, that will not be the picture of school lunches during this health crisis. We will be every other seat at the very least. possibly one every the third seat. We're going to social distance, and we're going to maintain that distance throughout the entire lunch period. So we might have to use other places to extend the cafeteria, or we might have to put in more lunch periods so that fewer students are eating lunch at any given time, and we can spread them out a little bit easier.
There's a question here about transportation, and yes, shuttle services have been eliminated. The question goes into students who potentially aren't eligible for busing, high schoolers and Broadway students. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. If you wanted to rephrase it in the chat, we could address that. But if a student's not eligible for busing, then unfortunately we're not going to be transporting that student. We have to be very cautious of how many students are on buses. That's why and even at bus stops, maintaining social distancing at those bus stops, masks on the buses. We're very concerned about bringing a large number of students into a bus in a confined area where the virus could be easily transmitted.
I'll go to the term shuttle services, and that piece of the busing has been eliminated. What we're doing with buses is much like classrooms. Students are going to be kept in groupings as much as we possibly can, so then they're in a consistent group of students. And the same goes for the buses. In the past, we've had some students riding, say, bus 1 in the morning and leaving from address A, and in the afternoon, they're riding bus 2 in the afternoon, and they're going to a different address. Well, that puts that student in contact with 2 different groups of people, and that's a contributor to the virus spread. So what we're doing is we're saying each child has a bus assignment, one bus assignment for the day. And so whatever bus that student's riding in the morning, they will ride the same bus in the afternoon and return to the same address. As much as possible, they might be able to return to a different address if it's part of the same bus route. But we cannot have students leaving from home in the morning on one bus and going, say, to a daycare provider in the afternoon on another bus. And so that does eliminate the shuttle, where some students are being shuttled from, say, the middle school to one of the elementary schools. Middle school students stay at the middle school, elementary students stay at the elementary schools.
New subject here. Will kids be able to have their book bag and their own supplies, as opposed to using lockers?
The locker discussion and the book bag or backpack discussion is ongoing. We're trying to figure out what the safest way is to operate. In the past, it has been brought to my attention that at some buildings, students shared lockers, and in another building, there are lockers stacked on top of other lockers. And so that doesn't really contribute well to social distancing or minimizing touch points. And so we're actually looking at, can lockers be used? And if they're not used, are book bags and backpack a better option? So that, again, keep your eye on the frequently asked questions site on the website. And as we finalize that, we'll put that information out to you. As far as students with their own supplies, that is the direction we're going. Community type supplies, whether it's markers for the entire table at a primary building, or shared items, even like in the art classroom, those types of behaviors or situations are going to have to be limited, if not eliminated. It's going to really trend more towards each student with individual supplies. With that being said, I don't think it's my design to say that students will have to have more things. purchased for them at their homes. It's just going to have to be that in our classes, we're going to have to pass out items to individual students rather than having like a supply area that any and all students can go to get certain types of supplies. And again, eliminating the number of hands that are touching those supplies and keeping it individualized to each student.
Regarding the role of the health department, what is the turnaround on these decisions? Are they performing this duty for other schools in the district? And I think that might mean in the county. And do they have the capacity to do this?
Short answer for that one, to be determined. I don't know the capacity of the health department to increase staff or to or what the capacity is of the staff members that are there. Yes, they're taking care of all of the school districts in Miami County, and everybody's going to be looking to them for guidance. But they have told us that they will be there, to help us with these decisions and to make the decisions in a timely manner. If it's in reaction to a positive case, there is a specific timeline that we have to stay inside. And so we'll be looking for quick guidance and making the quickest decision possible to quarantine and or begin cleaning activities in the classrooms and the buildings.
Can we talk a little bit about traditions in the district, including open houses, back to school nights, and other events for sixth graders, for example, who are now going into a new building, ninth graders going into the high school, as well as scheduled pickup?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that we talked about this afternoon with one of our task force groups as far as what back to school night and open houses would look like. And we're very concerned about those transition grades K, 2, 4, 6, 9, and how we get those students acclimated and oriented with their new buildings and their new teachers. So we have talked about trying to identify days leading up to the start of school where we would have kind of a small group or students grouped in small groups for those types of transition meetings or orientations. Also talked about scheduling times for parents to come in and meet teachers rather than just a 2-hour block that's open, that there would be more of a scheduled time for parents to come in for those open house nights, particularly at the elementary levels, the K-5 levels. So those are things that we're going to be working on over the next week or two, and we'll have that information pushed out as soon as possible. Another good question here about transitions, whether it's going from math class to government class, things like that. That is also something that one of our task force groups is studying and discussing, exploring one-way hallways, one-way staircases, things of that nature to maintain traffic flow.
And all of these things potentially are going to require additional supervision. And so we might have, staff members taking on additional responsibilities to help with the flow of students in the school. I saw a question about TSEP, and yes, TSEP is still an option in the school district. And it also said, how would students get there? TSEP is part of our bus routing system. And so our buses do run to TSEP. The only issue I see with that is if a student is coming from, say, home in the morning and then goes to TSEP in the afternoon, that might create a busing issue if the student has to change buses. And so we'll have to, if you're one of those families that student can start the school day off at home and then goes to TSEP after school, please contact us and we'll have to see what supports we can put in place for your situation.
I have a question on devices. Are there any learning devices provided for those who choose distance learning options?
Yes, with an asterisk. If you choose the online learning option that Tip City Schools is providing, the school's PLP option, you remain a member of the Tip City School District. And yes, we have devices that we can get to students and their families. If folks choose to select another online provider that might be a state or national provider, when you go into those programs, you're actually selecting, in essence, another school district for your child to go to. And so you would be withdrawing from the Tip City School District. And at that point, no, Tip City resources cannot be used for folks who are not enrolled in our school district. So again, Schools PLP is the partner online program that Tip City Schools is operating. The other ones that are out there, and I can name a few, but I don't want to promote or disregard any of the other programs. But if you choose one of those online options that's not Schools PLP, you would be required to withdraw your child from Tip City Schools to participate in one of those programs.
So it was more of a comment than a question about more school-specific information, meaning school building-specific information. And really throughout this process, what we've been trying to do is start with a general overview, and that was the 5-day all-in person plan and the full-time online option plan. And now we're working down the line here and getting into more of the details with our task force groups. And then beyond that, there will be some building specific things that will need to be discussed as well. And so your comment about possibly having building meetings like this certainly is something that we'll take note of and we'll consider going forward.
There's another busing question about students used to walk to the middle school and then get shuttled to the high school. And now with that shuttle being gone, that particular question being so new to the area, I don't know the bus routes. And so we'll have to see if your house is actually on one of the high school routes, and then your child could get picked up at home rather than having to make it to one of our other buildings to catch the shuttle. If it's not in a bus riding area, then that's a walking area, and then I don't think we have a bus to provide to your house. But again, call in or email in, and we'll get that question to the transportation coordinator, and we'll get an answer for you.
So another question was, what happens if a staff member's family member tests positive? So I'll just use myself, for example. If let's say my spouse tested positive, that would get reported to the county health department, and the county health department would quarantine me, and probably I would have to contact my employer at that point, and then they would know that things needed to be taken or precautions needed to be taken, and contact tracing and things of that nature in the workplace. So the county health department would be involved in that situation as well if a family member or spouse were to test positive of a staff member.
There was a question here about homeschool versus online school and access to extracurriculars. If you're in online school, and I'll have to double check, if you're in any type of other schooling option in our district, I believe you're eligible for extracurriculars. Is that true?
That's correct.
So if you're online, either with our online program or one of the state or national offerings for online school, I believe they have the same rules as homeschool families. And so you are eligible to contact us for participation in extracurricular programs. Last one, if a student calls in sick for any reason, will they have to prove that they don't have COVID before being allowed to return to school? We actually had the health task force meeting today, and these are the types of questions that we're trying to put structure around. There are provisions for, I think the word that was in the health department guidance document was provisions for routine illnesses. And then there were provisions for COVID, symptoms or COVID confirmations. The part that we're having a struggle with as we set those structures in place and those protocols is that there are so many symptoms that relate to COVID that could relate to something else. The example we were using today was strep throat. If you have strep throat, there's a potential that, you're probably going to have a sore throat. There's a chance that you're going to have some kind of congestion. There's a chance that you're going to have a fever. All those things are there, and they're also part of the COVID symptoms. So we have to find out from the health department if the person has to be able to prove what they are diagnosed with, rather than necessarily saying that you have to have a COVID test. So those are questions that are still out there for us, and we're going to define those by contacting the health department this week for further clarification.
There's been a couple questions about what the elementary school day may look like and whether kids are going to be just sitting at their desk all day, or if there's still going to be social interaction and station rotations and recess and things of that nature. And the answer to that question is, yes, we are going to incorporate station rotation. We're going to have recess. We just need to be able to do that in this new normal and socially distance, and make sure that we're limiting touch points. In meeting with the elementary teachers today, they talked quite extensively about how they could set up stations and keep students grouped together, and limit some of the manipulables that they would be using, and then sanitizing those in between use and things of that nature. So to better answer that question, no, students are not going to be sitting at their desk all day.
And we are going to take, again, as many safety protocols into account as we can, so that students that may have compromised immune systems can participate in the school day as other students do.
Do you have any idea when a decision might be made on face shields?
Well, face shields are going to play a part in our process. Again, as we said earlier, masks are mandated. And so anybody that's going to use a face shield in place of a mask, we have to be able to document the reasons why, and we have to be able to report that to the health department. So face shields are going to be a part of our program in a limited sense, and we have to, again, validate the reasons why folks are not wearing masks and they're wearing face shields.
Great question here about students who are participating in the full-time online option, and how would they get the social elements or some social elements within that. That's something we're going to continue to explore and work with our school counselors on, because we do see that is an important part of students' development and an important part of school.
And the last question there is, will parents know of other students doing the same program so that they can possibly interact and coordinate with the other students or the other families? That would depend on parent permission. If we put out a permission slip to the families that are participating in the online program, and the families that say, sure, you can share my contact information with other parents that are in the same grade or in any part of the online program, so we can talk about how it's going. If we have parent permission, we can share that information with other families who it's going to be a collaborative permission from both sides. There was another question about do the school districts possess COVID tests? And not to my knowledge. We're going to work with the local health providers to access testing systems and testing sites. Our job is to monitor symptoms, and then we get students who are displaying symptoms back with their parents as quickly as possible, and then parents can undertake the medical protocols at that point. The schools are not going to be participating in the testing. We have to just respond to the results of any tests that are taken by our students or our staff members.
So there have been a lot of great questions this evening, and we know we didn't answer all of those questions because there just are so many of them. We will, as Mr. Stefanik said earlier this evening, we will be updating the frequently asked questions document on our webpage with the questions that have been asked in this chat this evening. And we'll try to answer as many of those questions as we can. As we've seen today, this is a moving target and things are changing by the hour, it seems like. But we're going to do our very best to provide our students with a safe learning environment to come back to school.
Thank you for your participation.
Address? You want to give out the info
Oh, yeah.
address?
Yeah, and also if you think of questions outside of this this meeting, please email those to our website that we have set up to take in those types of inquiries. It's info@tipcity.k12.oh.us. And I'll quickly type that into the chat here in the right-hand side so that you all have that while Mr. Stefanik is closing things up here.
That was partway through, but again, we appreciate your participation. My hope is that we can continue with community forums on a frequent basis. And so for folks that want to interact directly with the superintendent or the district staff and possibly in the future, even principals in some of these sessions, we will continue to have these on a regular basis, even post COVID-19, so that the community can get information about important parts of the school district. Thank you for your participation. Keep sending us questions, and we'll keep sending out as much information as we can so that everybody can make informed decisions about their child's education. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.